Let us start a new topic, theory of business or the theory of firm. The first question that comes to our mind is, what is the goal of the business, or what is the objective of the business? Why do people get into business? And and there could be several reasons as to why people get into business, or what is the motivation or the goal of a business. And one of the important ones could be make as much money as possible. This we consider to be the most important objective for a business, though there could be others as well, to strive for a very large market share. It could also be that people who want to be their own bosses decide to set up their firm, or their objective could be to take care of the environment and things of that nature. But from our perspective, we believe that people get into business, or one of the major objectives of businesses is to make as much money as possible. Now, to operationalize this objective, and that is to make as much money as possible, in economics what we have done is we believe the firms want to maximize total profits, and that will give them as as much money as possible. Now, to maximize total profits, we need to understand what we mean by total profits. And total profits is the difference between sales revenue or total revenue and total cost. In economics, we use total revenue in place of sales revenue, and both of them mean one and the same thing. So let us follow the convention of economics and use total revenue. And the difference between total revenue and total cost will give us total profits. Now look at the following. If the firm wants to maximize total profits, what it has to do is, in a way, maximize total revenue and minimize total cost. And so how can a firm maximize total profits, maximize total revenue, and minimize total cost? And let us look at or examine each of them separately. To understand all this, let us make some simplifying assumptions. And so initially we'll keep it simple, and then we'll try to complicate it as much as we want to. The first thing, let us assume all along, is whatever a firm produces, it can sell it. So there's no difference between production and selling for the firm. And the second thing we assume is this firm or business produces only one type of product or one type of output. It could be just black shoes, it could be white shoes, and so it produces and sells one type of output. Now, the price at which it sells this output, let's call this P, price per unit. For example, if the firm produces and sells shoes, it may sell shoes for say $10 a pair or something like that. And then it produces and sells say Q, or quantity of output produced and sold by the firm is say Q. And so when we multiply P times Q, what we get is the sales revenue. For example, if each pair of shoes cost say $10 and the firm sells 100 units of shoes or 100 pairs of shoes, how much money will it receive from customers? It will be $1,000. How do we get this number? It is price, which is 10, times output sold, which is 100. So 10 times 100 will give us 1,000. So this is how the firm calculates total revenue. And remember, the firm wants to maximize total revenue. And when you look at what total revenue depends on, you know, to maximize total revenue, the firm will try to charge the highest possible price and try to sell the highest possible amount of output. Now, now you must remember one thing, whatever a firm produces, it has ultimately has to sell this output to people like you and me or consumers. And what is consumer behavior? What have we learned from the theory of consumers? We tend to demand more at a lower price and less at a higher price. So it's not that the firm can charge any price it wants and it can sell any quantity of output it wants. It is ultimately constrained by the behavior of the consumers, and that is we tend to buy less at a higher price and more at a lower price. The price charged by a business is constrained by consumer behavior. Another reason as to why this may happen, or what could be another constraint for the price charged by a business, is what kind of competition it faces. For example, if it faces very extreme kind of competition, or where there are large number of competitors, in that case the firm may like to do or charge the price that others charge, and this situation is called market competition. Look at the opposite of this. If you produce a product which is one of a kind, maybe you do not have any competition, or you could be like a monopoly, you are the only seller that sells this good. Another possibility in terms of restricting or constraining price charged by a business is we may have a monopolistic competition. And what is monopolistic competition? It's a blend of monopoly and competition, or in other words, it has some elements of monopoly and some elements of competition, monopolistic competition. Now, if you are looking at competition amongst few, this situation is called oligopoly. Amongst few, oligopoly. Or in other words, what this market structure could do is, or this is in a way restrict the price behavior or the price charged by a typical business. You may be in a market where you have very large number of competitors or perfect competition, or maybe there's no one like you, as in the case of monopoly, or a mix of monopoly and competition called monopolistic competition. Or you might be looking at competition amongst few, and that situation is called oligopoly. We will study each of these market structures as we go along, but keep this in mind that the power to charge price by a business is constrained from two sides. One is from the consumer side, the other one from its competitor side. Now let us look at the other determinant of total profits, and that is total cost. Let us abbreviate total cost as TC, that is the cost of producing and selling one type of output. Now here again we'll make simplifying assumptions, and that is the firm uses two inputs, one called labor or number of workers, and this will denote by this letter L, and the second input being units of capital or number of machines, which will denote by this letter K. Now we'll also assume that the worker or labor is paid a wage rate of W, and capital receives a rent, which will denote by this small r, and so our small r represents rent per unit of capital. Now look at wages times workers. number of workers. Suppose you have 10 workers and each of them is paid $5 a day. What will be the total labor cost for us? That will be $50. And so W times L represents our total labor cost. Total labor cost. What about rent times capital? Rent times capital will represent our total capital cost. And so when you add up these two, what you will get is total cost. So let me just write this down. So what is total cost of production? It will be total labor cost, which we know is wages times number of workers plus rent times capital. That will give us total cost of production. Now the firm wants to minimize total cost, and now we have broken down the total cost of producing something into labor cost and cost of capital. We know the firm wants to minimize total cost, and how can a business minimize total cost given total revenue? It'll try to minimize number of workers, it'll try to minimize the wages paid, it will try to minimize the rent paid, and also minimize the amount of capital paid. That's how the firm can minimize total cost. Now consider each of them separately and see how businesses make their decisions. To minimize wages, what will the firm do? One is it will try to pay the lowest possible in one country, and if it finds it cannot lower the wages too much, what it will do is it will outsource its work to another country so that the labor cost is minimized. Another way they can minimize the labor cost is by introducing more and more machines or more and more technology, and that could also help you minimize labor cost and subsequently total cost. Now whenever you call any customer service, for example for a bank, or you want to book your tickets online, and what you find is your call is normally directed to an automated service, and it's very hard for us to get and talk to a live person. And why have the businesses done it? They simply want to keep the number of workers at the lowest possible rate. And in a similar way, the firms will try to get the most efficient machines which can do a lot of work and pay the lowest possible price. So there are different ways the firm can bring down the total cost. Now some things to highlight as far as total costs go. Number one, how much it costs you to produce depends on how much output you want to produce. If you want to produce more, chances are it will cost you more. Then how much output we produce depends on how many workers and machines we use. And how many workers and machines we use also depends on how much output we produce and sell. So keep this in mind, and this was a quick overview of the theory of business, and what we'll do is we'll consider or look at each one of them in greater detail. And as a first step, we'll look at the cost side, and that will be the next video. So thank you for your time.